Okay, my name is Enrique Dreyer. I don't really have an official title, so I guess it'd just be like developer. There's just three of us, so I'm a brother, a husband, and a developer.
Yeah, that seems to be the trend with indie games, that you guys wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
So you made a really, really cute and unique game called Pop-Up Dungeon. So the first thing I want to talk about is where did the idea for this game come from?
Well, that's a good question. Basically, what happened was one day we were just playing, I think it was called Castle of Ravenloft, and it's like a little tabletop game with figurines and everything that's based in the D&D universe. And we're just thinking, you know, we always like to sort of mod out our own D&D sessions. So we were thinking it'd be great if we had the capacity to do this online, share it with people. And so that's where the sort of seed began to all this. The premise was to try to make it as simple to do as possible. And I mean, this is something that I think some people will kind of butt their heads against the wall about. Game design is really hard, but we're trying to make it as easy as we can. So that was the basic idea to begin with.
And then, like, talk about the most unique thing is your game is absolutely gorgeous. It has this really kind of, I'm gonna say like it's like a Paper Mario pop-up, which is in the name, like pop-up book design, like very similar to that of like Paper Mario games.
Yeah, that is interesting how that came about. Initially, we were thinking we were just gonna do a sort of pixel, voxel, simple 3D type of thing. But because we thought, no, look, the easiest way that you can create a little enemy or a piece of equipment or something is to just import an image and have the system cut it out for you. The only way that's going to work is in a sort of paper craft world. And so that's when we got introduced to sort of all of the paper craft type of RPGs that are made out there that are really awesome. A whole bunch of tabletop people that just create these whole cities out of paper. And so we try to model it a little bit after that. And you know, like you said, pop-up books and things like that.
I mean, what engine did you build the game in? Because it looks absolutely gorgeous.
It's just built off of Unity, but there's an extensive amount of, it's almost like its own engine built off of the Unity engine.
So talk about what are some of the challenges when you wanted to make a tabletop game, but you also wanted to give players the tools to make their own game within your game? Like, what are some of the challenges when designing that, going through the development process?
So the biggest challenge there was that the actual game portion of the game had a very short window for development. It was like about a year and a half. So the like 50 hours of content plus that are in there with the like 25 levels of the Wizard's Tower, the 2 story-driven campaigns, all that was done in basically the very last portion of development, because all that time leading up to it was spent creating the tools that then were used to create the game. So it was really challenging to just sit there for basically 5 years developing sound assets, graphical assets, the tile sets, all this, but not being able to actually make the game until the very end. That was really challenging.
Can you talk about, like, your game is very similar to one that actually kind of stumbled, Sword Coast Legends. Like, that game came out and didn't do too well. Why is your game so much more, it's just your game seems a lot more organized, a lot more easier to understand. Like, it seems like it's what a tabletop game should be in a digital space.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't speak to that game. I'm not that familiar with it, but what we've tried to do is distill everything. Like, for instance, one of the main things that we get, and one of the things that we're working on is, again, leveraging everything to make it as simple as possible. You import an image, it's going to be put on a stand. You get to, in one node, decide what happens when you interact with that image. So that image will be like a townsperson or, you know, like our vending machines, our treasure chests. So an interactable prop. All of that is distilled as much as we can into the tool that you really need to tell your story. But we get a lot of requests, for instance, for saying like, oh, I want to handcraft this exact interaction inside of a level. And so we say, yeah, you could certainly do that. And we could create the tools to do that. In fact, we do have the tools to do a lot of that, but that gets very complicated because you have to script. There's just no way to tell a computer, hey, when somebody clicks on this, make sure this happens. If they choose this, do that, all this. So instead we say, look, take care of your combat, take care of your few interactables and everything in the level, and then use these, cards that you see on the campaign table to tell your stories, to do the dialogue, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really the mantra, is to make things as easy as possible.
One of the hardest things about making a game like yours, or any tabletop game, or any kind of make your own game mode or story game, is the UI, which I think has been a point of criticism to your game. But so what are some of the challenges when trying to give players all of these tools so they can do practically whatever their mind can think of, but at the same time try to present them in a way where it's not overwhelming?
So that's, I think, mostly impossible, simply because if you are going to give people a wealth of options, they got to be somewhere. So you can do the whole thing, like, I don't know if you're very familiar with like a lot of production software, but like Maya, I right click and there's this like crazy amount of options that come up. If I alt right click, or all of these things happen, and you have this amount of tools, it's almost like impossible to know everything, what everything does. So we just try our best to hide options that you're not going to be looking for and not going to need. Present it to you, especially when we're talking about characters or creating abilities, the stuff that most people would get into, not the hardcore, campaign design or projectile effects design. Then in that, we just try to kind of go off of what you would see in like a character sheet for a D&D. So you're going to have your stats, you choose your abilities, you choose your equipment, you customize your look and your animations. You're done. That's it. You choose your sound pack, and that's it. So it's basically just sort of presenting players a somewhat familiar look of the character sheets that I think they're somewhat familiar with from tabletop games.
Now, I'm just curious, was there a lot of like sites, a lot of games get, not your game in particular, but some games claim that they can't have you upload your own items to the game, or own pictures or own sound files. Like, for example, Super Mario Maker, you could add your own voice and sound effects to it from the microphone, but they weren't allowed to upload to the server for people to download. Why is your game able to upload pictures of, like, myself, or another third-party person into the block cube, into the pop-up cube, and be able to share that with other players?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that a lot of times what it has to do with is just, if you're Nintendo and you're going to be sharing with kids, what can happen. So our game, we take every precaution that we can in order to try to make sure that the flags are there, all of the filters are there, parental controls are there, but it is ultimately the internet. So, because we are a game, I think, that is more geared towards an adult audience, we can sort of get away with that. We do everything we can, but we can't guarantee your experience. If I were a parent and I had my child playing Mario or something, and suddenly there's things on it that they shouldn't be seeing, Nintendo's going to get in big trouble. So I think that's the main reason behind it. Other than that, I mean, the standard legal ramifications and EULAs apply that would apply to pretty much anything. We don't directly profit off of anyone's creations. They're not supposed to directly profit off of it. But if they're making original content, we say, go ahead, you can do a Patreon, whatever you want. We're not going to get in the way of monetizing because of us, but you obviously can't monetize IP content that is not ours. You can use all of our content, but not other content. And I think that if you look at other games, bigger games like a Skyrim or things like that, they'll have these sort of things in it, where people just put this character in there or this thing in it. And so it's just a matter of the internet doing what it does, I suppose.
Now, talk about, like, you have actually story modes and campaigns within the game itself. It's not just a engine people can use to create their own stories. You have, like, your main campaign, which lasts around a hefty, like, 5-6 hours. Then you have, like, a Mage Tower campaign, which is much longer. It has, like, 5 story missions, I think, in it. Like, talk about the design process for that and how you guys implemented that into the game.
Right. So it began with just the runs. It was just there are 3 runs included, but the runs are there to just kind of get in there, grind some gameplay. It's just about gameplay, testing your characters, whatever. There's an arena, and there's like this top 10, which is like a arcade themed one. But the story-driven campaigns were the ones that took a long time to make. They're very intricate. The second one has like this whole like ship combat sub game that's on the campaign table, where you're just basically using the flags and things like that to sort of demonstrate, because at the end of the day, this is kind of like the Crisis to the Crytek engine. It's supposed to show you what you can do a little bit. It's a tech demo as well as a game. So we wanted to make sure that we could show people that you can kind of create your own board game-like game inside of the game using the flags and all of that. So that took the longest time by far. The Wizard's Tower was the last thing that was developed, and that's just 25 floors that usually take about half an hour each. Sometimes a couple of them are a little longer. And it's just presenting you a static challenge that is ever increasing. So you kind of go back and forth and visit the tower as you try to climb up to the top and, you know, beat the wizard at the top.
What do you think dungeon crawlers have been able to withstand the test of time? A lot of other genres fade out or come in and out of popularity, but dungeon crawlers have seemed to be just pretty much here all the time, whether it's Diablo or, you know, Darkest Dungeon or other games like that. They seem to do very, very well with gamers.
You know, that's a good question as well. I don't know exactly what it is that makes it so appealing. It just is. I think it just appeals to the sort of that reward cycle that is just go, explore, get rewarded, challenged. All of that is just such a tight loop there. It's just such a neat presentation for it with very little fluff, you know, so you're just going straight through that sort of reward cycle. I think that's one of the main things. Other than that, I mean, it's very difficult to say because a lot of other types of games do the same kind of thing, but this one is just, and again, I should mention that it's not just dungeons in this one. So it's not just the fact that you're in a dungeon doing a dungeon crawl, but just the fact that you're doing this sort of quick progression. I fight something, I get a reward, whether it's in space or in steampunks or Japan or wherever it might be. It's just going to be that loop that I think is so intoxicating.
Yeah, I was actually watching some gameplay of it online, and like some people are, it's like it's not just limited to just fantasy. Like you can expand it. Like if you're creative enough, you can change the genre of this game completely.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd love to be able to do a cyberpunk tile set. That's kind of like my next thing that I'd love to be able to do. We just didn't have quite enough time, but you know, there's just a lot of different environments that you can use that are already pre-baked in there. All you got to do is select them.
And then you guys also have like core classes you offer to play, which is what you play through, and it's up to 5 people in a party, I do believe. Talk about the different classes as well as how you can like create your own class once you get the hang of how the mechanics work.
Well, so the classes are not really set. So you can actually just create your character and call it a warrior, but it plays like a bard or whatever, you know, it doesn't matter. It's just a tag, it's just a label. So there are no specific classes. It comes with 36 characters out of the box. And then there's, I think, like 200 characters you can download already. So all of those could be considered classes, but it's just still does have the archetypes. Like you're still gonna want somebody that can tank, somebody, and you don't need it, but you're probably gonna want somebody that can heal, somebody that can do damage, somebody that can tank. It's still a very, you know, good approach. You can have one character challenge the dungeon or 5 characters challenge the dungeon. And, you know, if you wanted to, if you're doing like an online thing through remote play, then you can actually use a mode that we've built into the game. You just hit the mode button next to the start button and select control enemies. And then a 6th player could control the enemies.
And then in terms of the art design, were there any challenges to making the game look like that? Did it make it easier? Did it make it harder?
Yeah, I'd say it made it easier in the sense that, you know, the whole idea is that we wanted an art style that would permit for people who are not like myself. I mean, I'm not really that artistically inclined. I just managed to sort of hobble my way through these things and get the job done after years and years of trying. But my wife, who's the 2D artist, I wanted her to keep a style that is just very much kind of in the middle of things. Like you could put an anime character next to it, you could put a traditional Western cartoon next to it, and it sort of will still work. So we went for an art style that's just very inviting for you to put your own creations into.
Then I know you just launched on PC, but are there any talks with your very small team to try to port to console at any time? Do you have maybe a publisher that's interested in porting it to console?
Well, our publisher has talked to us about it, and we are interested in it, particularly in the Switch. But that's ultimately going to come down to the sort of demand that there is and what all the technical difficulties are going to be, because one of the main things is that this game heavily leverages the Steam Workshop. So without the Steam Workshop and with whatever restrictions might come with working with Nintendo on the Switch, the game's sharing functionality may have to be pared down. So that's something we'll have to look into.
Hey, that would be really cool though, to like partner with Nintendo, then see like Paper Mario characters in your game, like officially licensed and all that stuff, though. You know?
Well, that'd be wonderful. That'd be wonderful, but I don't know if that'll ever happen. I'd love it.
So, Enrique, where can people go to find your game, and what can they do to support it?
Well, the easiest way to do it would just be to go to either popupdungeon.com or to just go straight to Steam and search for Pop-Up Dungeon and just buy it that way. I mean, that's really the only thing we're doing. We're just selling it there, 10% off for the rest of the week, I think. So just for the launch. And that's the easiest way to get a hold of it, is through Steam or Humble. You know, you can do it through the Humble store as well. That'll get us a little extra percentage. So if you're looking to be generous to us, you can go to the Humble store and get it there.